We are at the first MethodsNET Aarhus Fall Workshops, and we're going to have a short conversation about what is a methods workshop in relation to a normal methods course. So Levi, do you want to maybe say a few words?
I'm probably the wrong person. I mean, it's the two of you who have been doing workshops for a longer time. I kind of see, the main difference between a workshop and like a regular methods class that you would get like at one of these like method schools is how much time you devote to the course during the day. So these are all day full immersion and usually a little bit smaller group activities, right?
Yeah.
And so what does that look like for you, Leah? I mean, you've been doing this for a while, so how is it different?
So teaching qualitative interviewing, I'd say it's more a difference in gradation than in nature. I mean, even when I taught an interviewing course half day, so with less intensity, more people, content-wise, it's not such a big difference, other than that we couldn't go quite in the same depth simply because of time. Now, the reason I really prefer workshop teaching is we have few people, we have more time to discuss around people's questions. So the sorts of things I present are similar, but the dynamic is not the same because, okay, I have an agenda, I have a syllabus, but I then change the agenda as we go along because sometimes a question drags us sensibly into another direction. So we just go there and we spend just much more time discussing people's projects, not the specifics, but the kind of questions that different kinds of people have. So that there's much more time, I think, for them to process what they're doing, rather than knowledge transmission, which is part of it. But it's a lot more about digesting and processing. So I think this is, in that sense, it's really a pretty big difference, actually.
Yeah, I think in my courses, it's also one of the main differences is that we have the opportunity to go a little bit more in depth with either people's interests or people's specific projects. So we can do like, hey, you're doing something along the lines of what we're going to learn right now. You've got data. Can you bring it to class so we can maybe even try to run it and show how I always show multiple examples of things, but now we can see one in action. So that would be one of the main difference in the quant classes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and similar with Leah. I mean, the content that I present is not that much different, but it's the interaction with participant projects. And so people, for example, my workshop on process tracing, they come with a initial process theory, like a sketch, and we dig into it, try and unpack what's interesting about the interaction of these social actors, what are the drivers, dynamics, and it's kind of an iterative through the course of the week. We also talk about empirics in their projects, but it's this kind of repeated, like trying to take the abstract methodological lessons, design-related questions, and apply them. And through multiple iterations, I find that it's quite impressive how far they come within a week as far as really refining, what is the kind of core process tracing question, what are the kinds of evidence I can use and need to think about for researching this question. So they, other than just the content itself, they also really start really digging into their project, and I find like a strong development during the course of the project.
Let me ask a question that might be very obvious to us, but maybe for Quant it's even more obvious. Why do we need to learn methods, especially for interpretivist? I know that there's a debate in the field. Why should we learn methods?
But we have to learn about the method because the method is not independent of the finding. And speaking of interviewing, because there's also this pretty dramatic misunderstanding that interviewing is basically talking about people. Don't we know how to talk about people? We're talking to people, and then you go into an interview, and pretty much everything can go wrong that could go wrong from people not talking too much about the wrong things, manipulating you, misleading you, not being willing to talk, talking off the record. So many things can go wrong. So the least that we can do is to invest a few weeks into learning the good principles of interviewing and to be thoughtful about that. For us, it's just one method amongst others. but I think it's the least that we can do is to learn to do it well. Also, not to mislead people, not to force our opinions on people unintentionally, and to get rich material, because bad interview questions yield poor material. So it's in our interest to use the method well. Actually.
Yeah, I mean, for Quant, it's quite obvious. I mean, you probably want to use some specific techniques. You need to know how to use those techniques. But what about process tracing?
Well, the short answer would be we learn a method or a methodology, a design, so that we know what kind of question we're answering, and what is our evidence, and how can we treat that evidence in relation to our knowledge claim. So it's basically, we need to learn a methodology to understand what kind of question we're asking and how we can answer it with empirical material. So unless you have a good understanding of your methodology, your design, you don't really know what you're doing. So it's to have that really, like, this is my knowledge claim and this is why I think it's valid, and that's where methodology and design are critical. You can't answer that kind of question without having that kind of knowledge about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for the conversation, and we're MethodsNet. If you are interested in what these questions, if you want to learn methods, I think we've got the right formula, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully next year there'll be more of these courses.
Yeah, and more of these events at MethodsNet. So we would like to see you there. Bye, everyone.